So we'll begin with some meditation. Just find a comfortable position. Relax. Take some deep breaths. Notice how your body feels. In line with what we're practicing this week in particular, but throughout this series, really putting our attention on being mindful as we face disease and death. We want our practice to be one of being open and aware of whatever we're experiencing. And we can do that in any moment, whether we're actually sitting to meditate or we're walking or shopping or talking, doing chores or at work. And just having the mindfulness to notice how it is right now for us, how what's happening around us affects us. And just really being willing to feel that, take it in, be present with it, but not grasp it. So, what does it mean to not grasp what we're experiencing? Maybe the easiest way to think about it is what happens when we do grasp things. Like when someone says something to us that has the uh, im- implies blame or implies praise, then we might grasp that, something that we think relates to us, to our personality, to our identity. When we think about it, when we are affected by it, we can't help being affected and have feelings arise. But then when those feelings arise, if our mindfulness and our practice of being present with our experience is part of our habit, part of our training, then we don't grasp it. We don't think about it over and over again as much. Or even if it comes up, we don't grasp it anytime when it comes up. We don't take it in as self or related to self. In one way that it's described kind of in teachings sometimes that people offer is don't take it seriously or don't take it personally. Don't take anything personally. And we could use that as the maybe the bumper sticker in our mind that reminds us that we're not this self that we've been told we are, conditioned to identify with. So when things happen, even an illness, or maybe we're approaching death, we already want to be clear that it's only the body that dies and it's not us, not self. That none of the parts of the body or the feelings or the thoughts are actually our true nature. And we wouldn't call our true nature a self either. It's not like we recognize the fallacy of the small self and then become the big self. We want to let go of all identification and abide in the Dhamma. And what does that mean? And to know what it means, we want to witness, observe what doesn't change. Because all of that which is not self, it changes. We feel whatever we're feeling, physical pain or emotional pain, physical pleasure, emotional pleasure, or neutral feelings. They're almost like non-feelings. Any of those things we experience, we know they're going to change. We can't depend upon them. And a lot of times we look for comfort and stability in another person, wanting their attention, wanting their love, their support. And of course, it's wonderful to have good family relationships, good friendships. We do help each other a lot, but we can't fully depend upon that because all of that changes. As human beings, we change. Sometimes we're available, sometimes we're not. Emotionally, psychologically, physically. And what I've found through investigation myself is when I really was looking for maybe in a partner or in a friendship, someone else's love and attention to make me feel better, to make me feel safe, strong. It's never enough because we have to find that in ourselves. If we can imagine circumstances where we would actually feel completely at peace and safe by relying on what's outside of us, we can imagine the perfect scenario. We're grounded in the Dhamma and we really ask, would that do it? Would that make me safe? Would that make me completely relaxed and peaceful? My experience is the answer is no. No matter how dedicated, how reliable, it's still sankharas changing and subject to change. And that the only real refuge is Dhamma, or whatever we call it. Dhamma, Nibbana, awareness, consciousness. what doesn't change, what's always there, you come back to it, our attention to it changes, but when we come back to it, there it is, peaceful, solid, consistent, and not loving me as a person, but having that metta as its base, naturally there. So it may be confusing in the beginning. Like, how do we know the difference between taking the stand in our personality and our sense of self versus taking our stand in the Dhamma? It's really a personal exploration. We find in ourselves, in our own direct experience, what it's like to step back and be aware and observe from the perspective of the Dhamma. But it's right here every time, it's there. Learning how to let go of this perception of self, not something we have to try to do, not something to achieve, but just to witness, to become still long enough to see it. Not very long. Doesn't take many years of deep samadhi. It doesn't take many, many years of practice. It's more about knowing how to see it. It's right here. Sometimes we know this experience from childhood, but our conditioning is so strong to look outwards, outside ourselves, that we forget. So in this present moment, here and now, anything that I say, you might have some reaction to or feel affected by. It might be comforting or annoying, or can we be present with what's right now, here and now? First and foremost, just feeling it in its completeness and its fullness, not labeled, not put in a box by words. Because what we experience is more like the whole picture in all its dimensions. When we put a label on it, it's like a title or a caption. It just doesn't convey, it doesn't, there's no way to really describe with words. So even though words might arise in the mind, and sometimes it's helpful, we know that the words aren't the experience. And if we practice like this as constantly as possible, we start to see the world in a different way. So many things that we thought were so important just don't matter. And while judgments and criticisms might come up in the mind, we know that they're just sankharas. Not ultimate truth, not necessarily accurate either. We start letting go more of having to have it our way, taking sides, getting wound up by the world. And when we're facing death, we want to be well skilled in this observation of Dhamma, this observation of phenomena from the perspective of Dhamma, from being rooted in, resting in, taking our stand in Dhamma. When the Buddha was about to pass away, he told his disciples to be an island unto themselves, to take refuge in themselves, take refuge in the Dhamma. And he wasn't talking about taking refuge in our self, our personal self, our identity. It was taking refuge in Dhamma that we find within. I can only imagine how much so many of those people felt they really needed the Buddha, and how much they felt the loss when he passed away. But his instructions are the same instructions we need. The Dhamma, well expounded by the Blessed One, apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation leading inwards, to be experienced individually with wisdom. When we chant those phrases over and over again, but when we really practice deeply with this way of seeing our immediate experience, then those phrases take on new meaning. There's a depth. We know what they point to. And it's peaceful and contented, and generous, kind, and unafraid. And we'll draw the meditation to a close. And I'll share the screen with our sutta for today. So the sutta comes from the Samyutta Nikaya, and it's entitled The Infirmary. Here, the Bhante Sujato's translation. Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation is the sick room. It is the hall for sickness. The Gilana Sala. Sala is a word that some of you who come to monasteries get used to. It can be a building where the meditation happens, or where the eating happens. This is where the sickness, those who are sick, who are spending, are staying. And I'm sure there were some monastic attendants there. And even though Bhante Sujato uses mendicants instead of bhikkhus, my image is that this is a whole room of mats or beds for sick bhikkhus, because I would imagine they would be sort of have their own, and I'm sure the bhikkhunis had their own space for this. And their monastic attendants to take care of them. So at one time, the Buddha was staying near Vesali at the Great Wood in the hall of the peaked roof. And then in the late afternoon, the Buddha came out of retreat and went to the infirmary, where he sat down on the seat spread out. And he addressed the mendicants. Mendicants or bhikkhus. A bhikkhu should await their time, mindful and aware. So this is sati, mindfulness, and sampajanya, being aware. But sampajanya, let me show you the definition. Clearly aware, fully knowing, completely comprehending. And sometimes there's also some other words about wisdom in there. The way I see this is that the sati, mindfulness, sati and sampajanya are spoken of together in so many contexts, because it's not just about turning the mind and being present with. It's also having the wisdom, which is really, what I hear Ajahn Ghana, Ajahn Sumedho, and other Krupa Ajahns. This is what they talk about, because it's not enough to just be mindful of what we're doing. It's also having that Dhamma perspective, the wisdom. And so awaiting their time. So it makes me wonder if maybe the title ought to be hospice rather than sick room. It's like he's talking to all of these monks, saying, this is you're waiting to die here. And if you've ever taken care of someone who's dying, there is that sense, or there might have been, was certainly for me with my mom. There was nothing I could do. There was no way she's going to get better. It was that time. But that time of actually passing away is something we can't, we don't know how long it's going to take. I asked the hospice doctor when it was clear that she was dying. And I said to him, I know it's really hard to know how long this might take. The reason I was asking is because I was taking care of her and I needed to know, I wanted to know how long, because at least I asked him, do you think it's days or weeks? No, I think I said, do you think it's weeks or months or years? Because if it was going to be years, I knew I needed to organize things differently. I needed to get more help. And he said, months. And I thought, okay, I can do this for up to a year on my own. I feel like I can do that. It turned out to be 3 months. But waiting your time, you just don't know. But that's part of the experience of life. There's so much we don't know. Excuse me. There's so much we don't know. So he says, await your time mindful and aware. Now, what's the point? It's really because there's so much to gain by being present with something that's so compelling as those experiences leading to death. This is a precious experience that we can really make use of. We can awaken right there. So he says, this is my instruction to you. And how is a mendicant mindful? It's when we're meditating by observing an aspect of the body, keen, aware. Here's the sampajañño again, aware and mindful. Sampajañño, that's just a part of speech change. So it's the same word. Rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. So I hope that you've experienced, but if you haven't, you can reflect on into this and invite this experience of sitting down to meditate. And as you turn inwards, you're really letting go of the world, letting go of whatever is happening in the world, the desire for it, the aversion. Oftentimes these words are translated as desire for the world or aversion for the world. So any push pull, any kind of identification for the moment, you're just letting that go. In the bigger picture, we want to just let that go completely, all the time. It doesn't mean we don't interact with the world or know what's happening in the world or try to help make that easier or better, but ultimately we want to let go of identification with what's happening in the world, the clinging, the grasping. But we can practice it every time we sit down, and we can be aware that we're turning inwards and letting that go. And then he says the same thing about observing an aspect of feelings, an aspect of the mind, an aspect of principles. Bhante Sujato translates Dhamma as principles. So the principles of the Dhamma, but I'd rather leave it as Dhamma and, really take in what Dhamma is and what that means. Keen, aware, mindful. So keen is atapi. So avid, ardent, zealous with continuous effort. So this is an important part of the practice when we really pick up this practice, not just to use it on a cushion, but to use it as we're moving through life, or life is moving through us. I don't know how to that we're really interested in working with whatever is coming. Right now, here on winter retreat, I've got this thing slow down, and we have to kind of maybe slow things down enough. It makes it easier to be present with the what affects us, how we're affected by the conditions that are around us. And when we can have this kind of commitment to being present and aware and experience what we're that affectedness, and then to see it with Dhamma, this is a powerful practice. And so this is what the Buddha is encouraging. And the awareness is sampajanya, as I showed you before. And the mindfulness is the sati there, the sati maha. So that's how a mendicant is mindful. So using those 4 foundations of mindfulness, like we see in the suttas, again, in a few different places, how the Buddha encouraged us to really be mindful of all these aspects. And how is a mendicant aware? Now, for me, when I first, was reading this, I'm like, yeah. We're aware when, there's situational awareness. So this is a little bit of a different word. It's the same sampajanya, but it's sampajanya kari. So it's got another, it's kind of a compound in a way. Sampajanya and kari together, forming a clear perception of something, creating a clear impression of something, cultivating attention while this is happening. And he's talking about, and this is also in the Satipatthana Sutta, being aware when you're going out and coming back, when looking ahead and aside, when bending and extending your limbs, when carrying your robe and bowl, your outer robe, your bowl, and your robes, when you're eating, drinking, chewing, and tasting, when urinating and defecating, when walking, standing, sitting, sleeping. How can you be aware when you're sleeping? It's kind of aware as you go to sleep, aware as you wake up, waking up. I think it's more falling asleep. You're speaking and keeping silent and being aware of what you're doing. This translation of situational awareness is you're aware of what's going on. You're aware of the larger context. So it's, I think it makes sense that this is the way the Buddha describes it here, but sampajanya is used with sati in a lot of other contexts, even to mean like, let me take a look at sampajanya again, even to mean intentional or deliberate or purposeful. There's the way I see it, like imagine you're in that hospice room, which, by the way, the experience I had was pretty meaningful to me. When my mom, she was having a heart attack at one point. She was having a heart attack, and a lot of times heart attacks are not these dramatic, the chest pain and like a dramatic immediate event. It's over a little bit longer. It's kind of protracted, various symptoms, and she was in the hospital, and she didn't want to do anything about it. And she had kind of, what's that called, angina, where she'd have pain, and then she'd take some nitroglycerin. And her cardiologist said, well, because she didn't want to do anything, she didn't want to explore, she didn't want an angiogram. I'm looking at my nurse friend for the right terminology, because this is not my realm. But my mom didn't want any of that. She didn't want to explore it. She just, didn't want to do anything about it. And our cardiologist said, well, people can live a long time, getting those chest pains and taking some nitro for it. But now we're in the hospital because it's gotten really bad, and she doesn't want to do anything about it. So at the hospital we were at, they arranged to put her into this basically a hospice room. And fortunately, it was a private room. And when she was moved there, I was just amazed how quiet and peaceful it was. I mean, you know how hospitals usually feel so busy, so bright and noisy, and all kinds of people coming in to do things. And this room was completely different. It didn't necessarily look any different, but the feeling in it was so different, so peaceful, so calming. And what a wonderful environment to be in. And then her cardiologist came to visit, and he convinced her to get an angiogram. So the person in charge of the hospice care thing, I talked with her and I said, my mom has changed her mind and she wants to, do this. And the person's response was, oh, I went through so much effort to get her in there. And I thought, well, she just decided to try to, they told her that she would probably die within a week or two if she didn't do anything. And I'm thinking, anyway, she got the angiogram and the doctor said that, it was really, her artery to her heart was almost completely blocked. And she didn't know what she wanted to do, if she wanted them to put in a stent or not. So my brother and I had to decide. And we decided to try. Well, the doctor told us afterwards that he put the fiber into the artery, and it's like the size of a hair, human hair. And it completely blocked the blood supply. It was that small. But he was able to put in the stent and she survived and had a couple years more of life. And, it's like, who knows? But that point of, if you can imagine being in that situation where you're coming to the end of your life and you really are paying attention to turning over in bed, moving your arms and legs and what you're doing. And you're in that space of Dhamma. You're observing all of this with the body, with that kind of stillness and quiet. You're aware of what you're doing. And then, of course, there's going to be an awareness of what you're feeling. So I feel like this instruction, even though it felt to me like it's not really taking in the whole picture, I think it's a really good basis to point out just how aware and attentive we can be to the things that are going on and the context within which it's going on. So again, he says the mendicant should await their time, mindful and aware. This is my instruction to you. And while a mendicant is meditating like this, so you really can think of this as meditation, even if it's not what you usually like. It's not so much a samadhi kind of, formal, like doing my routine or watching the breath or whatever. This investigation, this way of being present, this is meditation. And when you're meditating like this, if a pleasant feeling arises, so this is the wisdom part, you're aware that a pleasant feeling has arisen. And then the Dhamma aspect, that's dependent. It's not independent. The pleasant feeling is dependent on something else. It's a sankhara. It's not constant. It's not steady. It comes based on conditions. And what is it dependent on? It depends on the body. And the body is impermanent. It's conditioned. It's dependently originated. The whole body is sankhara. So how could a pleasant feeling be permanent? Since it's arisen dependent on the body that is impermanent, conditioned, and dependently originated. So this is the reflection. That's the Dhamma, just knowing, okay, the body is not going to last, and this feeling is not going to last. So you don't attach to it, you don't grasp it. They meditate observing impermanence, the vanishing, dispassion, and cessation. So those words here, anicca nupassi. Anicca nupassi is, you're really observing this impermanence. You're watching the instability of this experience. It's like anicca permanence, but the nupassi is in this observance of it, being present with it, investigating it. And the vaya nupassi is this observing the decay, watching it fall apart, watching the dissolution, seeing the disappearance. And the viraga nupassi, you're observing that our clinging to it is fading away. You're observing dispassion, watching the fading of desire. The nirodha nupassi, we're observing the cessation, watching the ending. And it's not just the ending of the condition of the feeling itself. Watching that is also important. We usually miss those endings. But it's also watching the ending of our clinging. And the patinisika is the watching, the observing of letting go. So this sequence, this is what the Buddha calls us to observe over and over again. And as they do this, they give up the underlying tendency for greed for the body and pleasure. Why? It's not just like you give up the desire for the pleasant feeling and there's nothing there to support you. You're within the Dhamma as you're investigating and observing all of this. There's a stability that you never would get from the body or pleasant feeling. While they're meditating like this, a painful feeling arises. And so the same as with pleasant feeling, you do with painful feeling. First, you realize that a painful feeling is there. And because of the mindfulness and awareness, you're present with it in that way. It's like this. Beyond the labels, beyond the descriptions, you're present with what you're experiencing, and then you're applying the Dhamma to it. It's dependent, it's not independent. Dependent on what? It's dependent on the body. The body is in permanent condition, dependently originated, so how could a painful feeling be permanent? Since it has arisen dependent on the body that is impermanent condition and dependently originated. So you can see if we're working with pleasant feeling in this way and working with painful feeling in this way, at some point, pleasant feeling and painful feeling don't seem so different. I don't know if any of you have had that experience, but I have, where, intense pleasure and intense pain being the same, their sensation. Then they meditate observing impermanence, vanishing, dispassion, cessation, letting go in the body, and painful feeling. And as they do this, they give up the underlying tendency for repulsion, is the translation here. But it's aversion. It can also be translated as aversion towards the body and painful feeling. While a mendicant is meditating like this, if a neutral feeling arises, again, you experience the neutral feeling. This might be harder to do, but if we're in that mode of being present with everything that's coming, what's it like to be present with neutral feeling? And to see that it's also dependent, not independent. Pain or pleasure is coming around the corner. Even if this feels like nothing really, it's not going to last. It's dependent on the body, and the body is impermanent, conditioned, dependently originated. So this neutral feeling is also not permanent. They meditate observing the impermanence, the vanishing, the dispassion, the cessation, the letting go in the body, and neutral feeling. And as they do, they give up the underlying tendency for ignorance towards the body and neutral feeling. So this way of practicing that we can do now, today, you can be doing it right now as you're listening to this, whatever is arising. It could be boredom, it could be irritation, it could be fear, it could be interest, it could be whatever. Can be present with it, even as you're listening, and feel the way it actually is. And apply wisdom to it. There are causes and conditions for the way it feels, the way it affects us. So then the Buddha says, if they feel a pleasant feeling, they understand that it's impermanent, and they're not attached to it, and they don't take pleasure in it. It's a pleasant feeling. You witness it rather than being caught up in it, rather than being dependent on it, rather than being, oh, finally, good, pleasant feeling. Yeah. And with painful feeling, they recognize it's impermanent and they're not attached to it. And they don't take pleasure in it. Why is that? Because they're grounded in the Dhamma, which is a kind of stability that, as I said before, is much better than, like pleasant feeling coming from our senses. It's much more, it's there as a comfort and support when there's pain. And when there's neutral feeling, again, they're not attached to it. They don't take pleasure in it. If they feel a pleasant feeling, they feel it detached. If they feel a painful feeling, they feel it detached. If they feel a neutral feeling, they feel it detached. Feeling the end of the body draw close. Okay, so getting close to the end. You're getting close to the end. They're feeling the end of life draw close. They understand the end of life. I feel the end of life drawing close. I mean, it's so different for different people, different circumstances. I think it was Ayya Santussiká's grandfather who said he was going to die. And then he ate, went to bed, and died. Yeah, just like that. And, he knew he was going. I don't know. It didn't sound like there was any particular illness or anything. It's just he had a dream the night before that he told me. I don't think you can hear her. He said, oh, the Buddha's calling me. It's time to go. So who knows, feeling the end of life draw near, who knows? So when the body breaks up and my life comes to an end, everything that's felt, since I no longer take pleasure in it, will become cool right here. And then we don't have the push, the craving, the clinging, the karma to move into the next lifetime. But regardless of whatever you think of that, you don't have to believe anything. The practice of being able to be grounded in that, in the Dhamma, and experience life from that place, that is freedom from suffering. And the Buddha says, suppose an oil lamp depended on oil and a wick to burn. As the oil and the wick are used up, it would be extinguished due to not being fed. In the same way, feeling the end of the body draw close, a mendicant understands, I feel the end of the body draw close. Feeling the end of life draw close. The practitioner understands, I feel the end of the life draw close. They understand, when my body breaks up and my life is over, everything that's felt, since I no longer take pleasure in it, will become cool right here. Any questions? Yes, Ling.
Thank you, Ayya. It's kind of interesting to read. We take pleasure when we feel unpleasant or we feel neutral feeling.
Mm-hmm. I think
You know,
it means more like we're grasping. We grasp it.
so does that mean we couldn't let it go? And okay,
Yeah.
so that is a form of taking pleasure of it.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Marilyn.
This gave me I have a new idea about this. I always thought that when I die, I want to be alone. I don't want an audience. I don't want people
Mm,
owning over me and stuff,
mhm.
you know. And not wanting them to be put out in any way. They can go on about their lives, and I've let this be known, right? But now I'm thinking maybe it's a gift to them to say, come watch me go, you know,
Mhm,
let's see
mhm.
how this works. We can do this together. Maybe that's
Yeah.
maybe that's giving them an opportunity that
I
might,
think it's a yeah, I
yeah,
think it's a good way to think. But it depends on the person. Um, with my mom, I knew she didn't want people around.
yeah,
She only wanted her really close family members. Um, so that turned out to just be me, really. Um, and my friend, his mother passed away a couple years later, and everybody was there, like all kinds of people. It was, it's really so dependent on the person's,
yeah,
um, you know,
yeah.
character and yeah,
I
yeah.
worked in a hospice for a while, and I saw a lot of those variations where one case in particular, there must have been 20 people, in the room was stuffed full of people and down the hall. And
Mhm.
it's like I had a feeling this person just wanted to be just,
Mm,
but anyway, I guess she
yeah.
let me be known. But my own mother wanted to be alone, and she was alone when she died. And I often wondered too, like I learned a lot from being with her as she was dying and
Mhm.
learn and seeing her after she died and seeing her after like 14 days after she died. I saw
Yeah.
her again and without any kind of uh what do they do in the funeral homes,
Oh,
resurrection
yeah.
or something. And
Mm,
yeah. And I don't know if she would have liked me to have seen her, but I learned from it,
mhm, mhm.
you know.
Yeah. And it's not really her.
But that's what I mean. I learned a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So, I mean, what you're saying, it's like, yeah, from the perspective of being a practitioner, we see this process so differently.
Yeah.
We know that the body is just a shell, a vehicle, um, an opportunity for us to experience things. But what we're experiencing is all impermanent and not self.
But
So,
to actually experience your mother's body becoming like really horrible, really quite ghastly, It was a
yeah.
it was quite an experience, It was very convincing.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes. Yeah, and it's not common to have that experience in our culture.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I, yeah, I found it really powerful to practice with the Satipatthana while my mom was dying because that, internal and external, like the practice of seeing the body and how and reflecting on how my body is like her body, it's going to be like that. It's going to, in one way or another, it's going to die and break up like that. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Marilyn. Holly?
I really liked Ayya Chitananda's sharing of what her grandfather said. If I quoted it right, the Buddha is calling me and it's time to go. And it took me right back to an experience I had in 1976. Um, I had taken psilocybin and gone up into the Sierras just because I
Mm,
wanted to see what I could learn through that. It was the only time I used it. And in deep in the middle of that, I was curled up on a rock, panting apparently. And I had a conversation with a little green stick figure person who came out of a big black void
mm,
and asked me if I wanted to go. And it was death.
mm,
I don't think I was close to death, but that's the experience I had. And there wasn't fear.
mm,
There wasn't it wasn't a big decision of great portent. I wasn't rushed. And I just sat with it for a while or curled up with it for a while and eventually said, "Not yet." And I have kept that little stick figure that came out of the void, has been with me ever since.
mm,
It just is very tangible that there might be a time when I'm asked that question and I'll say yes, or it's time to go.
mm.
It's a very hugely impactful thing for me in my life. It's really, this is a great talk, all of it, and I could comment on more things, but I'll go now. Not
Yeah.
permanently.
I mean, I'm glad. Well, not ready yet. Not quite ready yet. But leave this incarnation behind. I mean, I'm glad that you had a good experience, but I really would caution people not to use psilocybin or things like that. I've seen so many problems that people have long term. Um, and also, I've seen even sometimes, I don't hear this at all with you, Holly, and I'm glad that it was a good
No, but
experience.
it's true. It is a risk.
Yeah, and I've also seen um, people get very attached to it, like, so excited about the experience they had that I could see the greed for it, for that kind of that kind of pleasure. Maybe they're not doing it so much from the place of wanting to learn. I mean, I used marijuana a few times in my 30s. It took a long time for me to get to that point. I had, like not really any desire for it, but I was encouraged from a spiritual perspective. And I just don't think it's got I just want to make this clear from all my experience with what happens with other people and my own little bit of exploration. what we can do with this mind is so much more powerful without the meddling of those kinds of substances.
My
And I just
feeling
have,
today is that in deep samadhi, I could have that experience today.
yeah, I think you could have that
Yeah.
and things that are even much more um, valuable. And I knew that I could say this with you because you would understand. It's not trying, I'm not at all criticizing what you did. And I don't think we should feel bad about anything we've done. I just want to share the warning there. So there is such a trend now among the Dhamma kind of like community to think this is kind of the way to go among certain parts of the Dhamma scene. So I think it's important to provide that. What is that called? The warning label. And I'm not gonna like say it really, really fast like they do on the medication commercials, but just really point it out.
I
Yes,
would never
Paula.
consider
Oh,
it today because it's a shortcut. And not only is it dangerous metabolically, it's a shortcut. And
it is, and
it's a
it
long journey to learn how to be with the Dhamma.
yeah, whether it's long or not. I mean, I hear what you're saying. It's like, but coming to it um, through the steps we need to take to let go of our sense of self, to not operate from the ego, uh, and to really experience the Dhamma directly without that kind of supportive substances or that. I mean, I think when you take substances, you just don't know what at all what you're going to get. But if we're really basing ourselves in the Dhamma, um, and we get the sense of what is that? What's that like? Like when I'm seeing things through the Dhamma, when I'm taking this stance in the Dhamma and not the sense of self, what's that like? We're not trying to attain something. We're not trying to become something. We're not even trying to get samadhi or jhana or anything. It's like to be present with what we experience with this kind of mindfulness and to be able to investigate it, to open up to the truth presenting itself to us. It's like it doesn't come from our own intellect or our own reasoning. This is not about me, an individual person, experiencing something. This is about seeing that we might say our true nature is that much bigger, solid, unchangeable nibbana. Thank you, Holly. Paula?
That's pretty heavy. But it all is. I have a question going back to the moment of death and who's in the room and the bedside and all that. And uh, you've mentioned that it's probably best that if people are upset that they don't um, display that behavior at the bedside. And as I'm working on some sort of um, guide guidelines, but something to offer my family so that they know what the ideal sort of possible situation for me. How would you give that information? How would you state that?
I think I would put the emphasis on a peaceful environment.
Good point.
And, like, the kind of chanting or music or Dhamma talks or whatever you want having going on in the background, and expressing love and support and encouraging them to use this same practice to work with whatever their feelings are, kind of on their own, not at your bedside. I think this is something we can share with anyone, even if they're not a Dhamma practitioner. You can find a way to say that. I had a beautiful conversation with my daughter the other day where she just like really understands what I'm talking about. And she's a clinical social worker and she works with, those kinds of a lot of Buddhist ideas in the way she works with people, but she's not a Buddhist. and yet, she really gets this idea of being present with what we're experiencing and seeing it with wisdom. It doesn't matter what we call it. People will also really get that there's that the color of the Dhamma of Nibbana is love, is metta. It's like this is really what we all look to. It's universal. It's not confined by a religion or a certain philosophy or a certain way of expressing it. That's all just pointers. So, that kind of way of expressing, I don't know how helpful that is. It's a lot of words.
No, it's actually really helpful because I was thinking of saying, if you're going to cry, don't be at the bedside. But instead, you're saying this is the ideal atmosphere for the bedside. And then, hopefully they come to that realization that being upset at the bedside is not peaceful. So that's
Well, and
helpful.
crying itself might not be a problem at all.
Oh,
Like, shedding some tears or, like that is not a problem. But the mom, don't go, don't leave
oh,
me, like, I can't live without you, like,
yeah.
you
I
know.
don't think any of my kids would do that. So
It's
I
like,
don't have to worry about that. I don't think we're at that point.
well, you
I can
raised
see
them
that
well, they're
happening
on
at a
their own.
younger
They
age.
could, you know,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I see what you're saying now. I'm glad I asked. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Paula. Nora?
Thank you. I was curious about if can remember the translation of the sutta that you read. When the question is, how should we be aware during while waiting in the body, feelings, principles, and whatever? I think the Buddha's answer was about while it was more like when, like bending, sitting, standing, da 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 da. It was more about, I guess I would say, continuous practice, not
Yeah.
not how to be aware, but when to be aware. So then that got me maybe a little later. There's more about how, but I was thinking, reflecting on the guided sit and what you just said a moment ago too. In the guided set, I think you said something like, it doesn't, we don't have to like have deep samadhi. We don't have to have years and years of this and that or erudite translations of whatever. We just have to do it. And I wonder if that might be one like clue as to why he doesn't really answer how. It's just like, it's very simple. We just do it everywhere. And then I find myself personally in a bit of a struggle or a pickle with like a certain level of striving. I want to do this right. Oh, I need to solve this. I need to like, that which is in opposition to just the beautiful simplicity of just taking this seat. So I wonder if you have any, I don't know, I was just
Yeah,
curious.
yeah. No, it's true. And what's beautiful about doing this continuously, regardless of what comes up, it's also when our wish to strive comes up. And then we step back and we see, oh, it's like this to be striving. And that place you're coming from is calm, observing that striving habit. And it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. It's so simple and it's so profound. Yeah. And it's applicable with everything.
Thanks.
Yeah. You're welcome. Suzanne?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for this talk and all of them. I just want to say the past few months while you're on retreat, I'm happy it's going well for you. Um, it's been a good environment for me on these Saturdays. And my question is about I broke my leg over a year ago, and I can walk now without a cane, but there's limping. And I'm noticing you were talking about striving. So it's really kind of interesting to see really the pleasure, but there isn't on the leg that doesn't hurt. Okay. So there's that step, but there's not really a lot of craving for that pleasure, but there is craving. There's like aversion to the pain and to the craving for wanting to walk.
Yeah.
Without the limp. So, but my question is about the speed, because I wonder, it just seems like it's changing when you're walking, it's like, yes, no, yes, no. So it's like, it changes so fast. So I'm wondering if you have any tips about that, like if I should slow down or just focus on the aversion or what?
I think it might be useful to play with that a little bit. Like, what's it like to really go slow and really be present with each step, just as kind of an exercise. And what we want from that exercise is being able to be, coming from that witness position where you're really grounded internally and you're observing this experience of this side's pleasant, this side's painful. What does it feel like for that pleasure to stop, that pain to begin, that pain to stop, the pleasure to begin? What does it feel like? And what is this really about walking, about wanting to walk normally? And these bodies are aging. They're not going to come back to what they were before. We think when we're injured, we want to get better and we want to come back to the way it was before. And maybe it will and maybe it won't. But what we want to learn is that if we cling to wanting those results, if we have craving for results, if we have craving for this body to be the way we want it to be, or anything else in the world, we suffer. We want someone to act the way we want them to act. We want people to say what we want them to say. And actually, even if we could be the puppet master of everyone, we still would not be happy. No matter how much they would provide love and respect and support and praise and all of whatever, it's never going to be enough because craving is never satisfied. It's only the letting go of craving, establishing ourselves in the Dhamma, and what does not change, that leads to real contentment and happiness. So I think you've got a great laboratory there with your body, and you can really use it. Make the most use of it you can, because what happens with your leg doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, I often have that thought comes like, well, Susan, if you could walk, you'd be craving something else. Right? It's always something.
For sure.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Olivia?
Thank you for the talk. Um, I'm thinking about when one is ill, not on hospice, but just ill, and that sati sampajañña for like the whole experience. I've been more brain foggy lately than usual, just whatever, hay fever, whatever. And I find like it's harder to convince myself to sit in meditation, which feels ironic because I have more free time. Like I'm like doing less and there's more open space, but it almost just feels like just fog time. And then I find myself having aversive thoughts, Wibawa Tanha, not wanting to have the feeling and then not wanting to have the feeling about not wanting to have the feeling. Like, and then I'm watching it, so I feel like I'm not just totally checking out. Like there is an amount of awareness. Sometimes I'll totally check out, but not for very long. That's not most of it. Most of it is like this. I'm aware, but I'm also saying I should be doing something else. Like it's not enough to just be sitting here being aware and then trying to do some chores. Like there's still a layer of like I should do more formal sitting. I'll listen to talks, but it's like I should do something more active. Like and so I try to turn my mind. So I think the instruction is try to turn your mind to that. So I do, but it just feels like a little bit of a hamster wheel of like turning my mind to it and then it gets sucked back in and turn my mind to it, gets sucked. So I wonder if I just need to sit more. Like, would your instruction be like, no, really do just, if you can, formally meditate? Or is it to just stay with this kind of awareness of the process?
You're
Or
reminding,
whatever else you want to say.
I think basically when what you have is fog, your practice is fog, and you're going to be as aware as possible of the fog. Let your being grounded in the Dhamma. I know you'll know what I mean. Being grounded in the Dhamma, you can let your intuition decide what your practice should be in this moment. If you should go do formal meditation, or if you should just practice with the fog, practice with the wish to do more, practice with the guilt feeling about meditating more, practice with whatever's arising. And trust it. Trust that awareness. Do what you can to let the awareness become really full and be with whatever it is. You're reminding me of Ajahn Sumedho's, like he's trying so hard to get samadhi, and then he gets malaria, and he tells Ajahn Chah, I can't meditate, and Ajahn Chah is like, malaria is your practice.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So practice with it from that place of really being committed to being aware of whatever is arising. And this practice is continuous. Like when someone asks Grace, how many hours a day do you practice? She said, I practice every waking moment.
Right.
So this is what we have the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
whatever the conditions are, they're just conditions.
Right.
They're changing. The fog isn't going to last.
Right.
The sleepiness or whatever it is not going to last. Can we really apply our mind to, it's not even like, it's not with a bunch of effort. We can't do this through effort. We do it through patience and
Yeah.
consistency.
Yeah. There's a key word, thank you, you said in there that's really striking me, and that's the trust. And I think it's a lot like when I'm saying evaluating this experience, I think what's happening is there's a lot of doubting mind. And then it's like that's where the awareness and the mindfulness and the presence could be there, and then the doubt still comes in, and like so the trust in just this is fine, like this is okay, we're just
Be
doing
present
this, we're
with the
being with
doubt.
this.
Just be
Right,
present.
right,
Now it's doubt. Okay.
right.
This is
And
what
instead
doubt
of like
feels.
following it, instead of like believing it and being like, oh
Don't
well, does
grasp
that
it.
really mean that I should do this and should it, like that's where I get lost. Yeah.
Because doubt is about thinking.
Yes. Yeah,
So then if we can
exactly.
see that and we don't grasp it.
Right.
So it's like part of that being grounded in the Dhamma is we don't grasp any of these conditions coming through.
Oh, it's so
When we
convincing
grasp, we
sometimes.
suffer. We know when we're grasping.
Yeah.
When we relax, we let go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're relaxing into the Dhamma, not into our habits, not into
Right.
our desires.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ayya. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Drew?
This discussion in a little more than an hour has had me so jumbled up in the most pleasing and curious way about my own experiences with death and how the practices or the cultural conventions that I've participated in seem to me to actually reinforce the opposite of what's real. You know, one of my bosom buddies died drowning, and they did a whole lot of work on his body to make him look like who my friend was before he drowned, and he had a suit on, and I'm thinking about how we celebrate people, you know, at the celebration of life, quote unquote, and how maybe the words I've said and listened to have been more about celebrating someone's identity than anything else.
Yeah.
And I even thought about, you know, it's kind of fashionable in some circles, you eschew burying someone in the earth and forget about the casket and all the things we inter people in. But in a sense, that now is seeming more natural of the universe, if I can put it that way, than what's become fashionable, which is, oh, of course, cremation and ashes. And, you know, I've walked around different parts of the world in the States with ashes in my hand, as if in those ashes, I'm actually holding my mother or holding my older sister or holding. And so this has just been so lovely to listen to all of you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think you're really expressing a lot of what we experience around this. And conventional reality is what we're dealing with all the time as human beings in these conventional impermanent forms. I scattered my mother's ashes. I'm planning to, I think I've mentioned before, I do want to update my advanced directives to um, ask to have the body composted instead of cremated. It's so much easier on the environment. It costs more right now, I hear, but that'll go down, I think, once it becomes more popular and there are more places available to do it. But so we have to deal with the conventional reality of what do you do with this body? But are we going to do it from a place of grasping the personality that we knew, rather than knowing that this person is also, their true nature is Dhamma, is Nibbana, is metta, just like our own. There's no separation. I mean, even without the formal introduction to the Dhamma, I felt there was no real separation when people would die. My grandparents, my father. And I had this experience of being very, very distraught over the breakup of a very important relationship, and realizing that there really is no separation, and saying that out loud. I mean, people, you'll see in the suttas this idea of the devas, like celebrating. You can hear them. I could hear them. She got it. There was so much, like, the voices of the devas excited, and my vision becoming so, like, the colors were so bright. It was almost this incredible experience that, of course, didn't last. But the idea that there really is no separation, that we really aren't these individual personalities. This is a thing we take on for a while. We're convinced that this is who we are, but it isn't really who we are. And that was where I knew abandonment is a non-issue. You can't be abandoned. But we can only see this from the perspective of Dhamma. And we really have to open ourselves to the truth, ultimate reality. It's not far away. It's not like you have to practice for 50 years to get there. But it is hard to let go of all this conditioning to see through it. But that if we are able to take in the directional signs of the Buddha, what he gives in the suttas, and what we hear from the master teachers, and we really, really commit ourselves to opening up to this truth, we can be happy and content. Even when we don't feel happy and content, we can observe that. There's no way that there's no circumstance under which we cannot use this. That's what I think. Thank you, Drew, and thank you, everyone.